everybody, and welcome back to Bourbon Over Baseball with your host, Bob. We have co-hosts El Presidente, Peter, and Matt today, and special guest, Colby.
Oh, I think just guest. I
Oh.
didn't know it was special, but I'll take it. I'll take special.
Well, the usual cast of characters is, Jeff and Matt and Peter and me. So anybody different than us, I guess, is special.
I am different.
Yes. So we know Colby from the card creation, people on Facebook, on Twitter, etc. He was talking about podcasting. He's done some YouTube videos in the past about how to play Showdown, which were excellent. And he also was a blogger. So we're happy to have him on. And we're going to see what some of his knowledge is. And then we might break down a player to everyone. So Colby, what's up?
And let's make it clear, it's not just any blogger.
Yes.
Colby's blog is what got us
Yes.
blogging and what got us card creating and really sort of, I think, sparked the renaissance of Showdown
Colby,
for
the
a lot of
OG.
fans.
Yeah, it was somebody told me that they actually learned to play from my videos, which I assumed that's why I made them, hoping someone would learn to play. And then when I actually heard it, I'm like, how on earth did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I used yours, I think, way back in the day to double check what I thought I knew because I played when I was a kid, and I'm like, okay, so did I do everything right? Is everything still correct? Like, did I not? And I think I watched all your videos and I read your blog, and obviously liked all the cards, and I was like, oh, good, there are still people creating Showdown. I just got out of college. I'm like, this is awesome.
I think it's like the same thing that happened with me because I was just Googling it one day, just like my cards, to like, oh, whatever happened to this? Because like I had 01 and 00, and then like I came across the blog, I'm like, holy shit.
Oh yeah, just so everyone knows listening, 00 and 01 fanboys here. We don't really play. I don't even know what 2002 to 2005 is. I don't really know what that is.
I remember being heartbroken when they came out.
Yeah,
I remember buying my pack because it was before. I mean, I guess the internet was a thing, but like spoilers and all that wasn't what we think of now.
Yeah.
And so I went and probably dropped $20-$30, which was a ton for me as a small child.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh, they're not compatible at all. This sucks.
Yeah, when I first opened, I was like, oh my god, I got like a 10 or 11, and I'm like, wait a second, like everyone is a 10 or 11.
Trot Nixon's an 11.
And they looked bad too.
Yeah.
Comparatively, it was a big disappointment.
Yeah, because it changed so much, and it was like, wait, what happened to like the colors, and it just changed.
So who's the graphics guys here, and who are the chart guys? Because I know we all gravitate one way or another.
I would say that we all are actually.
Yeah.
Everything.
You're all everything.
Yeah, so I would say initially when I first jumped on the team, I brought the initial Photoshop skills to Peter's blog, who did it with his own skills and with his charts, and then Matt had jumped in a little bit also to help with that, and then I brought in some better templates to help with, and then I know that then I started helping Peter make the cards from his charts, and so I think was that 2018 set then?
Yeah, and we sort of practiced with random like greatest teams. So we made like the 1998 Yankees or the 2016 Cubs and stuff like that to just sort of practice with the templating, and then tried to roll out the full 2018 set, which then Matt really helped with as he kept improving his Photoshop skills and using the template on other World Series teams, sort of like the new podcast series you're coming out with the like World Series teams. So like Matt did like the 2004 Cardinals or the 2001 Diamondbacks, 2005 White Sox, stuff like that. And then he got his Photoshop skills down and started pitching in with the 2018 set. And then we all just started making cards from there.
Yeah. So Peter's ideas and tiers and stuff helped, I think, Matt create a lot of his own cards. And then I came in with like data algorithms to try to help a little bit. So a lot of my a lot of my data and card create and chart creation came for like my 96 set that I'm doing, and then the 2019 was a lot of me. And then, but I would say Peter's sort of I made the algorithm, and I would have Peter help me with that to like create it so it'd be faster. But really, Peter, I would say, is the chart guy. If there is a chart guy, I guess. Even though like I said, we all sort of can do it without Peter. And then me and Matt have been focusing heavier on the art than Peter is, but Peter's done those too because he had a lot of 2018 stuff, done.
So I gravitate towards the charts. Like do we want to get into kind of how I got into this?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Give me your life story.
Segue here.
Yeah.
I was born as a child, as most people are.
Interesting.
So I got me and my next door neighbor got into playing. He bought some packs. He found the game first, my next door neighbor, and we liked baseball, and so we bought packs and we had a communal league where we'd play whole teams against whole teams. We had in a season and the normal things that you do when you're 12 years old and have infinite time. So we did that for the 00 and the 01 seasons. So like you guys all did, because we all love that format.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they transitioned up to 02, we both bought a couple packs. Again, spent $20-$30. Realized that I now had to buy a whole new collection and they weren't backwards compatible, and I walked away.
Yeah.
A little bit of a financial decision. We were just like, hey, we'll just play with these cards. So we walk away, put them in the back of a closet. Don't think about it much. I think after my senior year of high school, which is gonna date myself here, 07.
Oh, so you're younger than me.
I am with the young whippersnapper
Yeah.
here. I dug them out of a closet. I think we had moved and I had found them, and I had to make that decision, right? Do I throw them away or do I keep these things, and do I drag them around with me? Decided to drag them around with me. And then just the way my brain works, I'm like, you know what? Like, would be a lot easier than this, than like having to rifle through cards, because I had them all sorted, on base and then points and whatnot by position in little plastic bags. Does this sound familiar to anybody?
I framed all mine. I'm kind of an uber nerd.
Oh gosh, I have the original 5 Pokemon sets framed at one point, and then I moved and I had to take them off. So I have if it is a little piece of card. My mother didn't like noise, so trading card games was a good compromise for us.
Yeah.
So everything could go in the shoebox and could go under my bed, and that kept the peace. So after my senior year of high school, about to go to college, we refined these things. Go to college, me and my best friend. Guys in the hall like sports, right? Because it's a guys' hall. And we're talking, and we tell them, hey, yeah, we have this baseball card game because we're all watching baseball. That first semester, there's the World Series, and we're all watching the World Series and getting into it. So I'm like, hey, we got this game. I'll bring it back after, Christmas break. I bring it back. We teach everyone how to play. And now there's a group of 20-30 guys at this college who have an affinity for Jeff Hammonds and Juan Guzman.
Wow.
And FP Santangelo, the Showdown legends, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are people out there who think anybody who loves Juan Guzman, we know what the origin source is.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep playing with these 00 and 01 sets, and we run to the natural conclusion, right? Because we were able to buy a lot of the cards were cheaper to just pick them off on eBay. I think I got McGuire for like $8. Like, so that was like, because we just filled them out.
Yep.
We filled out the rest of the thing. So I don't know what the prices are now on the secondary market, but
they've been going up just because of the COVID stuff, but it's interesting right now.
Yeah, well, if you want to buy cards, go check the Facebook page. Someone will sell them to you.
Yeah.
So they're out there. So we finish out the set. We have it all on a spreadsheet. We're sharing them around, and we play a couple leagues. And we get to the natural conclusion, which is like, one would be great is if we could actually have Albert Pujols instead of Mark McGuire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, and someone just floated that, and it just laid and died. And one weekend, I think my roommate left, and I was sick as a dog. And I'm one of those people. I get the man flu, right, which is 2 steps above childbirth.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck in my room. Nobody wants to be like around me because I don't want to catch what I have. And I'm like, and I get that idea. What if we could play with Albert Pujols, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I have all the charts laid out. We know what years they're from. It should be easy to reverse engineer this, especially if you start at the extremes.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. I didn't have to spend too long. The 10 on bases were the top 30 on bases from 1999, I believe. And then, you can figure out the home runs and stuff. I started at the home runs and worked my way down. I figured that was the easiest way. was lucky, and that was pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
And I think it's close. It was close enough to accurate, especially for what we were doing, right? And this is this how everyone else kind of derived it for my chart guys?
I reverse engineered it the first time, and then I learned a little bit from Peter on tiers and stuff like that.
Well, because a lot of my reverse engineering came from going off of your cards. Because I had the 2011 and 2012 sets that you put out, Colby.
Yeah,
so
that was.
My friends and I bought those to like add in and keep our league going and make it exciting and new. And then, you know, as we were wanting to add more and more to that, we sort of went off. So like, I think in yours, the first 25, like the top 25 on base guys got on base 10s. The top
Yes, I used the top 2 for 11s, and I used 25. I couldn't figure out 30 for the life of me, and I think I figured it out like a couple years ago. I figured out it was 1 per team.
Yeah, which makes sense, but I like the way that you split it up. So we just sort of went off of, and then, you know, based on, yeah, and you might have used home runs per like 400 plate appearances or 500 or whatnot. But we kind of went off your charts and figured out, well, here's the ranges of home runs for an on base, like based on 600 plate appearances, looking at Colby's cards, and started making our own charts to line up and sync with yours so we could mix them in with the 2011 and 2012 cards. And that's sort of where all of our charting started.
Yep. And so that sounds like you were right on my scent.
Except for me, when I do 10s, I just hard line a percentage. I say it is X percent that the on base percentage that year. Everyone else above it's a 10. Below it, sorry, you're a 9 or below. I don't like favor in that respect.
I missed you hard line. What gets hard line?
The on base percentage.
Oh, you don't do it relative to the league. You do it in an absolute sense.
Yeah. Well, so what I do is I just alter the on base percentage for the league. So you just find a number. So you would say this year roughly it looks like 400 is an on base 10. There's usually a gap. Like when we did 2019, there was only 111, right, Peter?
Yeah.
It was Trout. So Trout had above and beyond way more on base than everyone else. So it wasn't like I could give it to 2. I'm like, there's one guy who's an 11. The rest of these guys are roughly 10. So you can sort of cut the algorithm to only feed off the percentages. You know,
which we went back and forth on because I was like, there has to be 2 11s, and one of them is Christian Yelich.
Oh, I am religious on the 2 11s. I think the two felt like the right number, right, where it felt special.
So I feel like it's more when there only is one. It's like that gem. It's like that was the guy that year. He must have been better. And the only reason I didn't do the 2 11s, and I told Peter this, is Trout had like, it wasn't like there was a guy like Giambi and Delgado were close in 2000 to make the 2001 set.
There's a big gap.
There was a big gap for Trout too, but
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. It was like almost 30 points.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, I can't in my right mind award him that. It didn't stop Yelich's card from being great because I actually feel like sometimes the 11s get shafted on the home runs. But that's just
I think there's plenty of material to go into the nuts and bolts for people who are interested in that on the making of the cards.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if we look at like the Barry Bonds cards later on, when you get the higher and higher on bases and what it does to his chart.
Yep.
Yeah, and my big complaint about the game, I've wondered if I could redesign the game from scratch, what would I do differently? You know, after you've made a couple sets, you start to feel that, and it's what can I do and what can't I do. So I make the 09 set, right? I just make it. I never thought it would see the light of day besides my dorm, and I probably put probably 200 or 300 hours into that. So give you an idea of how horrible of an idea of my time allocation. It sounds much worse now that I said it out loud. I'm so glad I didn't talk this through with anybody before I decided to do it. So I make 09. I print it out in the computer lab. on the computer lab printers on computer paper. We cut them out. We put them in a spreadsheet. We play another league. Great. Now here's the problem. People come back next year for school. And they're like, well, where's our 2010 set?
Absolutely.
So you give a mouse a cookie. And again, I made no effort to like gain any notoriety. Nobody knew about this besides the 40 guys on my hall. So I make another set. And then like most of those guys graduated and moved off. And this is where the neurosis kicks in here a little bit. The sickness that ends up happening when you start making these charts. And so everybody I knew who liked baseball moved off, and the next dorm I went on, like the guys just weren't into that type of stuff. They were into other, hiking and being outdoors, and they didn't really want to sit and roll dice they didn't want to play fantasy baseball. That was for sure. So, but I still made another set.
Which I think is what you started the blog with, is like the 2011 set.
Yep. So what ends up happening is, so I have 3 sets under my belt. I go home for college after this 3rd year, where I really didn't play a whole lot of Showdown. I think there was 1 or 2 guys who would humor me and would play a little bit and do different things. And I go and I get a summer job where I was doing property management. I was helping basically this office complex. I was doing the little errands, and there was a little computer lab where I could sit and hang out at the computer lab until, people rang and needed my help. And one of the guys who worked, kind of in the office or the building was like, hey, he's one of those everyone should have a blog people. And I'm like, I have nothing that anybody wants to listen to me about, right? Like, I'm not going to be this, multi-thousand person blog person. He's like, that doesn't matter. He's like, it doesn't matter that thousands of people read it. He's like, I could start a blog today about how to grow orchids when you work a 9-to-5 job as a single mom. He's like, and as long as that resonates with 10 to 20 people, that's good enough. He's like, is there anything where you have information that people would want? And I'm like, well, I have all these charts for a made-up card game, like in fantasy baseball, that was so wildly popular it went out of business 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He's like, that is perfect. He's like, people. He's like, how long did it take you to make those? And I'm like, okay, a couple 100 hours per set. He's like, so nobody else has done this? I'm like, no. He's like, that is perfect. Nobody has this information but you.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, okay, now just put it out there. And he gave me a little bit. There was, I'm a pretty type A person, as you could guess by the Excel spreadsheets and all that. And he's like, okay, just make sure you produce content somewhat consistently and don't just write a 3-page blog post and then don't post for a couple weeks. Like, split it up into the real bite-sized stuff. And luckily baseball was super structured. I could just send out, I knew I had to give away all the charts because that's what people wanted. And I had really bad Photoshop skills. If you go see some of the early work, just search the MLB Showdown Barry Bonds 1992 and one will show up, and it's just like, I think the whole card is right angles.
We'll see it shortly, and we can make fun of Colby then.
Yeah, there we go. So I just post this stuff, and I knew there were people who would, and I was like, okay, people will just jot it down on index cards and they'll be able to play, and that'll be my contribution here, right? And maybe people will read my blog. And so that happens, and I keep going, and I keep doing this, and I think I made a couple more sets. And one day I go check on my blog or on Facebook, or I think it was the Facebook group, and I see one of my charts, but it looks beautiful. It looks on this beautiful card, and I'm like, what in the world is this? I didn't make that. And somebody else had started taking my charts and started this Matt. I actually don't know how to pronounce Matt's last name. It's pretty intimidating.
We call him Matt P.
Matt P, yes.
Well, that's only because we have a Matt R, which is the Matt that's talking on this podcast, and we also have a Matt H that plays. It just seems like a Matt's a Showdown name. So
like people named Matt and people from Cleveland.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the bad weather. You can't go out and actually play baseball in Cleveland.
Right.
Yes. Well, and I love talking to Matt on Twitter because he's a big Twins fan. So anytime I do anything Twins related, I'm like, Matt, what's your scoop? I need the scoop on Twins.
I feel whenever I make examples of like, oh, like I'm making a set and I'm hitting a dry spell, I'm like, I just, like the World Series teams are super easy and I'm motivated. And then I get to like the Twins and that's like my default, like not good team. And I don't think and he always gets like, and it always ruffles his feathers because it's like.
If you made one just recently, he'd have been pretty pumped because the 2019 Twins were pretty stacked.
Yeah, so that's that ended up being this. I'll kind of carry through my life cycle because we're getting close to the end of my time with it. Is so I started making sets. Matt started doing the graphics, making them look good, and we pump out a couple more sets, and that's when I started to figure out that making individual cards was fun and easy, relatively easy. I think anybody can sit and make a card for a player, and you can have a philosophy. But then we started making sets, which was really cool. And I started coming up with little tweaks to them that I thought I used. I think my favorite contribution was the third of an inning pitch guys.
Oh yeah, yeah, those are fun.
So I thought that was the thing that was reverse compatible. That was my favorite contribution to it.
What about the lefty righty split batters? The guys that play like left-handed pitchers or right-handed pitchers. I thought that was nice.
Did I do that?
Yeah,
Pablo Sandoval.
Yeah, 2014 is the set that I have of your guys's, and I think it's like even like I don't know, Jason Hayward might have had one too. But either way, they have
it was Hayward, Carter from the Astros, and Pablo Sandoval.
No, there's someone from the Athletics
the
too.
Catcher on the A's.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Daniel Norris.
Yeah. So he gets like a boost or something for one or the other. And I thought it was graphically well done. It was clean and easy to read.
I think that was something that I deferred to someone else. Because I believe if I did it, it sounds like something I would have been against for the sake of aesthetics, which would be an odd thing for me to I just don't know that I would have come up with a clean way to do it. So I think that was somebody else's contribution.
Well, either way, if that was Matt or whomever, I mean, it looked really nice. That was obviously the one that I saw that I had, and I liked that one. And I thought it was also a cool way because we always do you play with strategy cards?
I prefer not to.
Okay,
my preferred way. So you had mentioned watching the YouTube video to make sure you're doing everything quote unquote right. And I think what I've enjoyed the most now that it's not, I guess it's owned by Wizards, but they don't care, right?
It's gone now.
yeah, it's gone, and I highly doubt they care much about it. They probably would be shocked to hear that anybody knows about it.
Well, we did get interviewed by The Athletic, the magazine, and he reached out to the original people from Wizards of the Coast that made the game, and he was very pumped that people still played and that it's reached so many people.
Yeah, so I got early in the blog, I got Tom on who had made that. So Tom Wiley, or Tom Wiley Hard. I actually don't know which one's his real one, but I've heard him referred to as both. So he made it, and he was the original rules manager for Magic.
Okay.
So real type A person. And this was early Twitter where I somehow reached out to him, and for whatever reason he decides to respond back, and I got to interact with him a little bit, and he was a good sport about the whole thing. I don't think he had no financial interest and didn't work for Wizards anymore at that point. Mm-hmm. So but that being said, without any authoritative body, I appreciate that you can kind of make the game what you think it should be and what makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that is because I don't know that I loved how the strategy cards that they made interact. I've tried to do a strategy card set myself that I thought was reasonable, and I have a tough time getting to about 150 cards.
So what I've settled on personally is a set of managerial rules that can be enacted as the manager, and that sort of accounts for the rules. But going back to the lefty-righty split, we always keep these the lefty-righty switch hitter things on here. The right-handed pitcher, left-handed pitcher, which means absolutely nothing without strategy cards, unless you had something like what you have, which is a bonus guys versus left-handed pitcher, or again the 2014 set that I had that. And I thought that was a nice way to do a card that did all of a sudden care if Bonds is a lefty or a pitcher was a right-handed pitcher or whatever.
Yeah. So the thing I would have done the most, so I do no strategy cards. I like unlimited steals, but I see where that can get abused if you have a weak catcher versus a fast team,
mm-hmm.
right? Where just everybody's taken off.
Yeah, we've done 5. I've settled on 3 right now is what I like.
Yep. So I like that. I like no strategy cards, and I have yet to find a tired rule that I really like. I had heard you guys in your other blogs or your podcast talking about the 24-sided dice from Clutch, and the guys from Clutch, by the way, they're killing it. Give them a Like they deserve a round of applause for their grind. When I first saw it, I'm like, this looks cool. I don't think they're gonna. I don't know where they're gonna end up, and I wasn't optimistic.
Yeah, if I wasn't, and I've talked to them because I know I'm friends with both of the owners of it. I've talked to them personally because I don't like O2 style cards, but that's what they kind of like, so that's what they went with. And they have to fight, obviously, to produce it legally. They have to fight so hard just to even stand those fine lines with the no pictures and everything. I mean, I've countlessly talked with them about that, but they have to use strategy cards. And I've said, hey, I think that slows the game down, but with the 2002 sets, you had to use them.
Yeah, it's wild. So I prefer not to use them.
Yes.
And then my bunt rules were you always what I thought made the most sense for bunting because I didn't like the automatic advance.
Yes.
And I liked you roll on you're giving up the advantage as a batter. You roll on the pitcher's chart. Pop up and strikeout stand. Everything else is a success.
Okay.
I thought that gave the high strikeout guys a little bit more juice because I noticed, and I think you guys probably see it on every time anyone makes their dream team, it's these like 3s and 4 controls, high ground ball, and then like all the cheapest 9s and 10s with max infield fieldings, and everyone feels like they're the first person who put that team out there. Yep. Right, like this Bobby Hamilton, like I shelled out the 360 for Barry Larkin, and the 350 for Edgardo Alfonso.
And then you got Bill Miller at third base with his +3 for
John Olerud at first. FP Santangelo's going to make an appearance. Maybe the 9 Ricky Henderson that's 170. Right, you see the same team, and it's just like
absolutely.
I'm like, okay, we all figured out that that's good. So I was like, yeah, but strikeouts are fun, and people like the Randy John, these high strikeout guys. So that seemed to, and it also just didn't make it automatic, because the all speed A team, get a guy on, steal second, bunt over, ground ball, fly ball in. Like, okay, that's baseball, but it's not that automatic, and there should be some tension.
And that's where I think. So I make 5 managerial moves. And you can only max out 3 in a category, and those categories are stolen bases, sacrifice bunts, intentional walks. And my bunt's similar to yours, so it's like a success. So you automatically get the advantage, you roll in the pitcher's chart, and mine is anything but a pop-up is a successful sacrifice bunt. If it's a pop-up, you popped up to the pitcher and you're out. But I like the idea that there's a risk.
Yeah, I try to go away from the sacrifice as much. I think you should be sacrificing with bad guys. I don't think you should be sacrificing with like your 10s who have bad charts.
Oh yeah. And I would say that since I've implemented that rule, it's only been these like 8-9 batters that have ever used it, because there's just too much advantage. There's too much risk by doing it or your disadvantage by using your 10s to do it.
Yeah. And the other rule that I always struggled with was the tired thing, because you guys, every time we're hearing about your 2000 set review, any 6 1 to 15 out for like 150 to 170 points was going to throw more innings than most teams like starter, right? Because they're going to throw like 3 innings back-to-back games or something, if you go by the pure rules.
So my rule is basically, and I don't like it, and I've been trying to figure out another way too, and I think Matt has a pretty good way, but my rule right now is relievers can pitch back-to-back games, and then they have to rest. So as long as you space them out every other game, that's been okay. And we also, during our sets, we've rounded down innings for starters to make it more important to grab relievers. Therefore, your starters who are like 6s can't go 10 innings every single time.
So I think my last set or my second to last set there was a Rockies team. It was whenever Chris Medlin had his crazy year, because I had 2 problems.
Yeah, that 2012 year with Medlin.
Yeah. So Medlin went insane, but he only pitched like half a year, which, by the way, if we have baseball this year, I think we're going to have to resolve that problem.
Yeah.
Right? Because if somebody hits over 400 for 92 games or whatever, right? Like, what are we going to do then? But so Medlin goes crazy, but he doesn't pitch anywhere close to the amount of innings somebody else would. And then all the Rockies got shelled. I don't know how the Rockies won a single game that year, because none of their guys pitched what would have been 5 innings. So what I ended up with was every year I need to make 5 guys who pitch 4 innings. And then I think the last set I did, there was like the first couple times I had to like stretch to find guys to do 4 innings, and basically what ended up happening was like a couple miserable guys and then a few guys who had great prorated years, which would let me make charts that I couldn't reasonably make for a 5-6 innings pitch guy. You know, so Medlin was a 4 1 to 18, right? So it was like one of those power closers, but he can only go 4.
Yeah.
It was the best way that I could feel to represent his card in that year. And that's an interest. The pro rating's always interesting.
And
go ahead.
I remember that Medlin card specifically because my friend Kyle and I really went hard in 2012 at trying to figure out what the charts were, because we didn't know, if you were going to put out another one, and we didn't know, like when those would come out. So we were just really excited as soon as the season ended to try to put what we learned about your 2011 set into 2012. And our biggest debate was about Medlin, because Kyle wanted to give him essentially Pedro Martinez's original card, like the control 5, 1 to 17 out, IP6, basically his actual stats. And I wanted to depress him because he didn't pitch enough innings.
Absolutely.
And I suggested the same tier. So like we think of it as tier 1 for that control 4, 1 to 18 out. I was like, let's make him a lower control and 4 innings. And then lo and behold, that was exactly what you put out. And I really put it over Kyle's head.
There you go. I'm glad I could settle a debate.
In the new set with Glass now, right? Like, so he had a great year, but got hurt. So he suppressed his innings. You could do that. And then I know, obviously, it's been fun to do cards for like the Tampa Bay Rays because they have like the opener. And so we have like starters with like low innings and relievers with like high innings, which has been really interesting to play with too. But Matt, do you want to tell about what you do for your relievers and stuff? I think that's a pretty good. And you have also rules with like starters can pitch in the bullpen and stuff. Also, if you want to tell Colby.
Yeah, that's usually just for playoffs, anyways. But so for my league, what I did was a pitcher can, if they pitch just their IP, it was to make like a 6 control and a 3 control somewhat level. If they pitch just their IP, they're good to go the next game. But
Okay, I like that.
So if it's a 1 IP reliever and you go 2 innings, you're out the next game. So that way a 6 out through 15 or whatever, and then a 3 out through 18 are on the same level playing field then. Like that way, say you just like your 3 out through 18s more, but you feel like you get screwed on IP, that way they're the same. Like if you go 1 inning, you're good the next game, but if you pitch 2 games in a row, you're out the 3rd game.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's definitely a problem in the rules, and it's definitely where the game rules engine starts to break down. And I just don't know that there's an elegant solution. I like all the ones I heard.
Have you heard clutches?
I like it. That's what when I started praising Clutch, I got sidetracked. I like their 24-sided dice, but having the extra equipments. I mean, I don't know how many 20-sided dice I've lost, right? Like, I also don't.
I own a lot of 20-sided dice, and I own a lot of 24-sided dice too.
Yeah. So it's having to. I like it because I think there's something visceral. I could see something visceral about like picking up the dice and having like a little stand for it. Mm-hmm. You know. Like the push the red button or break glass factor, I think really would be experiential, and that's what I've
tried to tell the couple guys that have kind of knocked that strategy. And I said, have you played with it? Because if you haven't, it's totally different than what it sounds like. And for people that don't know, that are listening, Clutch has 2 rules for they have the 24-sided dice. Use a D20 normally, and then they have a 24-sided dice when a pitcher is tired. So right when your pitcher gets tired, so he's pitched past his inning limit, the opponent can always use the 24-sided dice. So therefore, it does kind of hurt you by adding the percentage, that it's going to, beat up your back end of your chart if you're leaving a guy past his IP 1 or 2 or whatever he is. But also they have something called the mistake pitch or the X zone. So if a pitcher has like a 1 or 2, if they rolled that 1 or 2 on their pitch, it's a quote-unquote mistake pitch. The batter gets to roll in the 24-sided dice. So I love that rule so much. I actually incorporated that into my leagues, but only for a 1, and it's universal. If a pitcher rolls a 1, it's, oh my god, he threw a fucking meatball down the middle. You grab that big 24-sided dice, you roll that thing, and I'm telling you, the surface area is smaller than a 24-sided dice. That thing rolls forever. It's very nerve-wracking. It's very fun.
Oh, I like, because my favorite moment in Showdown is like a low, like a 8 or a 7. Actually, this is my favorite experience. I'm gonna paint a very clear picture. Luis Polina gets the advantage. That's where we're starting. And I throw that 20-sider and it starts spinning. Right? And I have no idea what it's gonna land on, and it could be literal anything. Like, so I could see with that 24-sider, if it keeps rolling and you don't like, if it rolls for a while, I could see that being experiential.
Yeah.
Especially at Bob's, like if we're playing his blind draft, we have to drink while it's rolling.
Yeah. So we play. Yeah, we play. You drink while the dice is actually rolling, and then when it stops, obviously, then it's over. Or if it rolls off the table, then the person that rolled off the table has to drink. But that I like to add those little fun drinking rules in there. I think people think that 24-sided dice is dumb. It's whatever. But if you've played with it, especially I think while drinking, it's really fun.
And it adds so much more value to the on base 6 and on base 7 guys.
Absolutely.
Since they would get a chart typically if you roll a 1 and then they already have a better chart.
Yeah.
But now you have such a better chance of doing damage, and it makes spending some points on them worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yep. So the challenges I found were that the people skew towards high on base when they play. That's just, I think that's the default setting.
Oh yeah, people are always in my league grabbing 10 on base guys that can't hit home runs.
Yeah, and it's like I just don't know if a bunch of like Nick Johnsons playing against each other is like the most exciting form of baseball I've ever heard of.
Well, and that's why I like the I mean, as much as I like constructed, the idea of like the draft is really fun because I mean, our last league we had 10 guys, 12 teams, I think. 10 teams? 12 teams. Jeez. And so there's all over the board. Like you're playing Ryan Braun, who's like a 6 on base at the time, like, and he like led the league in home runs. Like it was really fun. Just the dispersal of players. And I think Matt's league had 20 teams.
20, yeah.
Yeah. So and that was all done online. Matt was doing all the playing, but yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff, especially as you get deeper, and that's what a lot of our breakdowns have been. It's like, well, this card kind of sucks, but in a deep league, he's not bad.
Well, then another thing, and I don't know if you did it for doubles as well, Colby, but triples, there seem to be more triples than the percentages would necessarily dictate. Like I remember that Jose Reyes with the 16 to 20 triple range.
That was a mistake. I'd like to have that one back, actually.
Oh,
Speed A McGuire?
Oh, man, or I loved that you guys had the extra triples and doubles because especially doubles, technically the percentages really get skewed because of doubles off of pitchers charts. So you really need 5% double rate to earn 1 double on almost anybody's chart. But if you have more doubles on lower on base guys, especially like on base 8s, if you juice the doubles a little bit where you treat them not to the same extent as home runs in terms of the percentage, but you kind of round up more often than not, suddenly the on base 7 and 8 guys are just as valuable, if not more so, than the really crappy on base 10.
So they end up getting drafted, i.e. Javier Baez last couple of years. He gets picked up because his chart is so good, even though he's a 7. So it makes it like, if I get it, it's going to be awesome. It's a really fun experience.
Made it more realistic as a whole, especially because no matter what the math says, for whatever reason, low on base guys still underperform.
Oh, all the time.
In my experience, like on base 7s should be in the low 300s usually. But I mean, I think a big part of that is the average pitcher is not representative in a league because people take high control guys all the time.
I think that's the big thing, Peter. It's we base everything off average pitching. And no one's drafting fucking average pitchers unless you're doing a 30-man draft.
Exactly, and that's why I always interpreted the sort of extra triples and doubles that I saw in the early sets as being a really good workaround for it, and I kept incorporating it because I think it's really good. Yeah. And like that Jose Reyes is still always the number one team builder whenever my friends and I put them together. We love
because he's Speed A McGuire for like 300 points or something. Of course he is.
He's amazing. 450 points. Him and Shane Victorino, that on base 8 with the 14 to 18 triple range. Oh, we love that guy.
That sounds fun.
The stud.
That was so. Here's you guys talked to you guys hit on the big point. I have one card that if I could change one card from the 2000 set, do you guys have any guess who it would be?
You're talking about the MLB Showdown 2000?
The original 2000. The original 2000.
Okay.
I would change one card.
Not a misprint, not a pennant run.
No, I actually think the Juan Guzman and the Hammonds are good for the game. Actually.
I absolutely fucking hate them. I remake them every time I do a draft.
See, I think they're, especially when you first start, because I think that is like Mew being hidden in the first generation of Pokemon, right? Where it's like you're in on the joke. That's what I think those are. I think they were very good. I just
can't stand it because when I do tournaments, like I see the same error cards every time. I see freaking Juan Guzman, Brett Saberhagen, Jeffrey Hammonds. I see them all the time, and I'm like, I want to see some difference. I can't.
And no one's ever drafted Glenn Allen Hill ever.
Nope.
Well, exactly.
It really puts then into perspective how, like, Henderson Alvarez, I don't know if you remember, but every one of your sets, there's the one guy who's like the Brett Saberhagen, points-wise. Where he's like the Control 5, 1-16 out guy who's 440-ish points.
Yep, so pitchers, and you guys also have trouble with pitchers, right?
It depends. I mean, I've gotten into some, I would say, some heat on the Discord or Twitter because of my pitchers charts. They didn't like the way I did my doubles for like Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander. But I feel like we've been doing better as we go. 2018, good. 2019, I got yelled at, but we improved a lot of certain areas. Like what happened was, one of the big things we found out was our strikeout ranges were too high. And half that was on batters and half that was on the pitchers. But if you like kind of shift it down a little bit and get them off the batters charts as much, you can actually make them more reasonable. We were having like 20 strikeout games from people like Max Scherzer more often than it should be once in a blue moon.
Yeah, I feel like they got a lot of that. So here's the answer is the person I would change is Sammy Sosa. I understand McGuire being a 10-16 and Sosa being an 8-14.
Yeah. Are
supposed to be the same. I'd make Sosa an 8-13. And I feel like that little stretch would actually open up a lot of range in the 8 and 7 range that you just don't have available. But that 8 Sosa caps what you can do with an 8.
Yeah, I've played with him too, and he's fun to play with. But man, that one extra would be pretty stellar.
Well, and there was somebody I was looking at I was making something. I forget who. Maybe it was a recent set or something. But there was somebody who basically I wanted to make like an 8. I would have had him be an 8-14, but I had to make him an 8-15 because I'm like, well, he can't be Sosa because Sosa hit freaking 60-something home runs.
But then again, we don't know. They made a lot of errors back then, and we've talked about this separately. But I mean, you can't. Their formulas were good. It was fun to base it off of, but I think we've tried to make it better. Like I've done a way better job with speed, with fielding. Like, oh my god. Me and Matt and Peter rip on the fielding that they did in 2000. They're giving guys like +1 that were like the worst fielders in the league. They give, what's the big one? Palmeiro gets the DH. But
Bernie Williams.
Yeah, Bernie Williams got a gold. What did he get? The +1 OF. He was the worst outfielder in the league that year.
And only played center field.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some interesting.
So it's
become more scientific, and baseball's become more scientific.
And we've noticed that in the Discord, there's some guys that go even farther into the formulas than we do. I mean, the one guy uses like WOBA, like weighted on base average for like pitchers and batters. I mean, he gets really graphically into it. It's really pretty interesting. So his are very scientific, but a lot of his is Excel based. But yeah, I mean, we've done like a lot better with fielding. I think speed. Which has helped, I think, a lot. Especially like one of the big things I liked with our cards is the -1 fielding. I think that was a big thing they could have used back in 2000, where if the guy was like the worst at his position, and I don't mean like he was just a little bit worse the next time. Like sometimes when like Josh Bell for the Pirates,
Andy Ramirez,
some guys get like they're literally like 10. They cost their team like 10 more runs than the next closest first baseman. It is bad. I get that guy the -1. And so you're like, do you want him for his chart? Because he's going to hurt you in the field. It's very fun.
That is something that I also thought that the card should represent the year. And if they had a very memorable moment, good or bad, I thought that should be represented.
So you like the Fernando Tatis getting the on-base 10 because he has 2 grand slams and...
Oh, gosh. No, I don't think he deserves a on-base 10. Tell me one other thing about Fernando Tatis besides he had 2 Grand Slams.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's all I know him for.
His kid's in the league.
Yes, well, I love Tatis Jr. But if I want to go back to your other point about one thing I would change, and Matt and Peter will like this, the one card I would change from 2000 would be Javier Baez, or not Javier Baez, Lopez.
Oh, the catcher, Javier Lopez.
No, Javier Baez, the pitcher.
Vasquez,
that's it.
Oh yeah, he was.
Yeah, so I like the idea that Matt and Peter are throwing around about possibly doing a remastered 2000 set with the corrected controls, because Javier Vasquez, for whatever reason, gets drafted all the time in my leagues because he's like a super solid 1 through 15 out pitcher, but he was awful that year. There's no reason he should have got that card. And I during that Expos podcast, well, I guess
he's got 2 doubles. I think that they thought that was
he gets
worse.
drafted all the time. The other card was like Mike Hampton,
Eric Milton.
Who's the
somehow getting a 6.
Yeah, he's a tier 2 out of nowhere with a And then yes, the big one for me is Mike Hampton.
Yeah, I know you like the Mike Hampton one's like Peter's card.
See, I think Javier Vasquez would get torched by fast teams though.
I'm telling you, he just gets picked up all the time because his card is
for his price.
It's actually
then
a pretty
punish
solid
him.
Card. But he didn't do good at all. Like it was terrible. He had like a 5 ERA.
Well, that's the thing is he's still a tier 3, and that I think that was the big thing because pitchers are really difficult because it's a lot harder to quantify versus like an average hitter, and sort of spread it around mathematically in the way that you can for hitters. With
and
the
there's no good like charts for doubles because doubles a lot of times are based on the field they pitched at.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us use a lot of sort of art in creating our pictures, and what I've noticed from a lot of the sort of play testing, the biggest determination of how a pitcher performs, in my experience more than control, is the tier that they're in, and that roughly their ERA is going to comport to their tier. Like tier 2 guys tend to have ERAs in the 2s when played out over like a 40-game season. Pedro tends to have an ERA in between like 1 and 2. Guys who are like the David Cohns of the world tend to have an ERA in the 3s. And so as weird as it is, because it should be based on whip, and then we've sort of distributed and made it like an ERA plus whip sort of situation. But the strongest correlation I've found to how a card actually performs is their tier to ERA. And so we've done a lot of stuff where we've tried to work in the percentages and like the control to outs and how their whip should go against whatever the average hitter of the set is, but within that tier. So like, Mike Hampton sneaks in as like, I think if we were going to redo it, instead of a 3 on at 17, which is a tier 4. So that's like his card always ends up getting in like the 4 ERA range, which is almost 1.5 runs higher than in real life, and sort of move it around that way. And that's sort of how we've been trying to fix how we do pitching. That makes sense.
I am not in love with my pitching formula. So my top 10 in ERA I always just made custom, and I'm guessing those are your tier 1 guys. And that was to make sure I got the 3 1-18s and the 6. I think I always do a 6 without a double and like a 6 1-16 or 16-20 single.
Yeah.
And there's another like a 6 1-16 with no walk.
Yeah.
Like those are like, it's like, okay, like we're gonna get 10 guys and we're gonna look at the 10 guys, and then if somebody has what I would consider like once every 5-10 years they can kind of get up into the Pedro level, though I think that's a bit generous.
Yeah, so like we only do it if their ERA and whip is below us. So like basically a guy earns his chart based on what his ERA and whip are. So like in the original set, the only tier 1, if we were going to look at 99, would still be Pedro because his ERA and whip were under like 3. And then there'd only be 6 tier 2s. So like John Smoltz wouldn't get the tier 2 or Kurt Schilling because they didn't have the numbers for it. But Kevin Millwood still would, Randy Johnson still would. It actually lines up really well. But
most of those do. do okay. So here's my philosophy on card making, and this is what I settled on and came to peace with, was that this is a hitter's game, and people only get excited about the top like 15 to 20 pitchers.
Yeah, and I think that's where we wanted to sort of not be constrained, because we noticed that there was always like the Corey Kluber and R.A. Dickey, for instance. There was always going to be a guy who was a control to 1 to 18 out with no doubles.
Yep.
And so
the worst thing, in case you guys ever become a major league pitcher and you want to have a good showdown chart, don't finish 9th or 10th in ERA, because I custom make them.
Yep. And so we noticed that, and we were like, that's tier 3 with a super low control. And so like R.A. Dickey in our leagues when we're playing it out was constantly an ERA higher than he should be.
Mm-hmm.
And so was Kluber. And so that sort of got us thinking creatively of like, oh, so if we were going to revise pitching, how would we do it?
Yep.
Because basically so then my friends and I charted 2016 and 17 and didn't really put anything out there outside of the really crappy looking cards that I made for the blog every once in a while. Once you stopped posting, I started posting.
Yeah, once we can't have a Colby fix, we got to do something about that.
Yeah.
So real life, apparently spending hundreds of hours a year on making a showdown set wasn't good for my career.
Well,
and finally
didn't Matt also have a kid?
He had a kid,
Yeah.
and then there was one year where he was really gung-ho and I really dropped the ball. And then I kind of got the bug another year, but he has to do so much legwork, and I have to give him lead time.
Yeah.
And I think, so it's, it's for those who are enjoying it, please enjoy the sets. But like, whether they're my sets, you guys' sets, or what Clutch is doing, it takes a ton of work.
Oh,
yeah.
Like it is.
I think that gets lost a lot too, is how much effort gets put into it.
Yeah, and I think when we see some of these people that do like the Excel spreadsheet stuff, they're just like, oh, here's a sweet Excel spreadsheet. For me, an Excel spreadsheet, the initial draft of it takes like no time. And then I have to go through, do all the, well, not me. Well, I did it for 96, but like me and Matt will go through and fix all the fielding, and then Peter's going in, fixing the pitching, make sure that everything's right. The batters, if there was any errors like with the formula, make sure everything looks right. I mean, that takes a long time. That's just the formula.
Yeah. So can I walk you through my whole process?
If you want, yeah.
So
this is the Colby podcast.
This is the Colby podcast. So about September, put a sheet out there and start populating with who I know is going to be in the set, right? So and so's got 500 at bats for the Yankees, right? Like we're going to get the first like 8 or 9 guys in there, and Matt's going to start cutting people out, maybe even earlier than September, right? So he can get, if someone's got 400 at bats or 300 by the All-Star break.
This is sort of what we talked about, Matt.
That was our plan for this season.
Yeah, we're like, grab them early, cut them out early.
Yeah, so basically every month we'd go through and we would add a bunch of guys and be like, this guy's going to be in there. I think we started after the trade deadline because we went with you're on the team you end with.
That was our exact plan for the summer, was every month we'll start going over it and then we'll start cutting who we know.
Because the cutting, and I was horrible at it and I was going probably way too fast. It took me forever to just sit there and cut guys' crotches out, right? Like,
why are you spending so much time in that crotch, Colby?
Yeah, the amount of time I spent in like this computer lab, C lab, like cutting out like Gary Sheffield's crotch is So we start compiling, we start cutting, right? Because I can't work on charts till they're done. Yeah. Maybe if 1 or 2 people had gotten injured and we knew they were out for the year, we'd make a chart.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
But you're talking 600 cards. So here's also my belief. I thought of it more as if I could redo it all, I would make it a box set, right? You buy the whole thing. 20 players per team. You can play every team out of the box. The first set was only 15.
I'll break here for a second. That's exactly why I liked your 2014 set so much, and that was the first one I was able to get. That was one thing I hated about 2000. Like I'm big Indians fan, so is Matt here.
You guys only needed 15 in that set.
Oh my god! I know that was all foils, but I couldn't. I want to play I wanted to play the Rockies versus the Indians.
Sandy Alomar, it's only a 6.
Yeah.
I like doing whole teams.
Yeah, I have to have the whole team, and your thing was always a 20-man set. So when we made 2018 and 2019, we made sure that there was a guy for every position. There was like enough starters, enough relievers, and then the super stellar teams, they'd get like an extra guy. Maybe like the Royals would not get a full 20 because there was just no one left to like put.
No. So my answer to that would have been the Baskin-Robbins team. the 31 flavor guys. So for the '04 Red Sox, the pinch is it comes down to Youkilis, Dave Roberts, and Mirabelli at the end, all of which were critical, right? Mirabelli's Wakefield's catcher. Youkilis is the Greek god of walks and would end up going on to have a good career, but really, I don't think you would remember him in '04. If I had made this set in '04, you wouldn't have remembered him. And Dave Roberts does nothing except for one thing, but he has the biggest moment of the three of them, right?
Yeah.
So he gets the card, and then Youkilis gets a card. Like I had to pick between the three, and Mirabelli gets left out.
You did that too, Peter. Didn't you give like a Dodgers guy that was like, or I feel like you gave someone.
I ended up adding David Freese back in.
Yeah. There was like you like had a card that was like we were making the cards after the season ended, and in the playoffs, the guy like did an amazing job, and Peter's like, he's got to be in the set. Like, if you're a fan of that team, he's in this. He's got to be on the team.
And Pierce for the Red Sox.
That's what it was. Yeah, because I remember he did something. And you were like, he has to be in the set. He did so good during this in the playoffs. Like he has to be in there.
My pinch was between Rodriguez, who had basically been a starter all year, and Evaldi came in, and he had that heroic. He pitched like 1,000 innings of relief to save the bullpen so they could win that series, right? And he's regarded as this legend. He gives himself up for the team, but it's like he had a decent regular end of the regular season, and he just has one heroic moment, and you're priced in. So it seemed to be there was room for 20 people.
I agree. Extra people. I thought your 20-man thing was awesome because right now I could take a 2014 set and say, you're playing the Rockies, I'm playing Indians. Let's go have some fun. Like you don't have to worry about like. I have to mix 2000, 2001 to make a full team for everybody to do, and that just doesn't seem as fun. I mean, it is and it isn't. For my 96, I am not doing that, but for our sets when we do it going forward, we've always done that. I think that was a good change.
It's so hard to get like the second catcher for like a team that finished with 80 wins. Like,
no, trust me,
because there's 7 of them.
There are some rough guys that we've put out.
Like how many Molinas are there out there? Like what do we do?
My worst one was Victor Martinez's, I think. 2019 was it 2018 card?
Yeah, the 10.1.
Yeah, well, he's like a DH, C speed. He's like the worst card I could ever imagine. Like no one in their right mind would ever draft this card. But you gotta have 20 guys. Gotta have a player.
Yep. You're just hoping there's some veteran who like started the season and got hurt and retired because like you can put him in for name. Yep. So October 1 or whenever the season ends, you should have all 600 guys out. I got to go find my percentages to do my on base because I did it relative to the league, not absolute. So I knew what my 10s were, and you could, based on bases, how many outs on the chart. So I'd make the tiers, and I'd make my charts out that way, and then I'm just going through and I'm just doing everyone basically by the number, right? And I'm trying to make my 600 cards. And as I'm doing that, I'm putting them into spreadsheets, and I'm trying to find 10 DHs. I'm trying to find 10 third of an inning pitch guys, and I'm trying to find my five innings pitched. Or 4 innings pitch, I'm sorry. So I'm trying to get those guys, and I'm trying to keep track of them as I go, and I know where I need to move stuff along. And then you got to compile them all by position, trying to look at them by position and try to figure out, like, is this a deep position? Like, what does this position need? Like, what are we? And then you're kind of looking and trying to figure out, like, what does the set need, and what are guys who might be on their last leg who deserve kind of like an homage? So that was where I would, because one of the challenge I had is almost everybody wants to have like a 19-20 homer, 16-18 double on their chart, right? Like that's how everybody's chart comes out.
Yep.
So I'm like, how do I get those guys with like 17-20 homer, no double? So who's a guy who either has a reputation for being homer heavy, or like has a stat that I can like exaggerate? Because and this is where the philosophy.
It just reminds you of like Joey Gallo.
Yeah, Joey Gallo.
I can't hit singles. I only hit home runs.
So like Sheffield towards the end was good like that. Guys who the stats didn't bear it out, but if you saw the card and you looked at the stats and you knew them, I wanted you to go, that makes sense. I'm glad to hear the Medlin was that way. Like I wanted the card to feel right.
And that's where the art comes in that Peter talks about a lot. Like I know I'm at fault of this, and that's why I got yelled at on the Twitter, is because I'm so statistically driven by the data that sometimes the card itself doesn't work or doesn't feel right. And like there's that art, especially in pitchers. I think pitchers for sure need that touch.
Well, and like I think the big thing there is because it's all a game driven by variables of 5%.
Yeah,
which is a huge span of differentiation, especially when you're rounding and doing things like that. Where
there's only 400 combinations. Like,
yeah, exactly. So it ends up you have to get creative with it and start playing into sort of partially expectation, partially in a way to differentiate these guys by skewing it a little bit here or there in order to make it, I mean, a set with a lot more variety. Because if you don't do that, it can come off as a bit like robotic, which just isn't as fun. And then B, to make it feel like real baseball.
Yeah, that was how I did. I wanted to feel right and I wanted to be statistically close. But so the goal is that maybe one guy per team would sacrifice his card for the set. And I think most of the time I help people. I think the only one I hurt that I can remember, and I don't know if this was a set that anybody ever saw, was Ortiz should have gotten an 11 one year. And I took it from him and gave it to the guy who was third in line. Because I didn't think giving it to a DH made sense, because I don't know if anyone likes their DH rules. Which I feel bad about, because I feel like Ortiz needs a piece de la resistance card. And that would have been it, and I just took it from him.
So let me sidebar here really quickly. I'm guessing this. You are a big Red Sox fan?
I am. So I was born in Plymouth, Massachusetts, of Pilgrim fame.
There you go.
So
it's fun to I joke about this a lot, that Cleveland is the Mecca. And actually, when you were joking about moving, I was like, "Are you moving to Cleveland? Is that like why you're coming to the Mecca?" But Cleveland seems to be the Mecca that I've joked about for Showdown. We got me and Matt, our Cleveland guys. We got Peter, who is a big Brewers fan, but he's based in Chicago right now. And then you now being a big Red Sox fan. So I always like to hear what the fans are.
Yeah, so it's definitely the Red Sox, which is good because like the Red Sox, like being they're statistically driven, have been Showdown has looked favorably on them.
Oh, it looks amazing for them.
Yeah,
though
they had a team 1 year with 5.
I've heard rumors that the 0-1 Pedro should have been way better than it was.
Well, it's him and Bob Gibson, right? Like,
well, we were talking about this with the guy that on the Discord does the WOBA stuff, was like that year was the best statistical year, like weighted year ever, and we've made pitcher cards like Nolan Ryan and Bob Gibson in the 700 to 800 range, and it just seems like that Pedro one, even though it was amazing, should have been better than he was.
Yeah, well, and that's feeling right. So in the '99 season, the only guy who I think had so you had McGuire and Sosa had their second best years, both of them, right? So they didn't have historic years because they both outperformed that year the year before, right? So I think the highest tier for power should be the equivalent of a 10, 15 to 20. That would be McGuire 98. I think if you break the home run record, you deserve it, right? So
yeah.
So Ruth, Maris 61, and Bonds, right? I think those guys all deserve to be whatever your view of the equivalent of 10, 15 to 20 homer is, and those should be sacred. I don't think you should help anybody get to that tier because I think that's sacred. And I think on base, I don't think you should fudge people's on base up higher. I think your on base should be what it is, whatever your system is.
Okay.
Yep.
Everything else, I think you have a little bit. You should be able to move 1 or 2 numbers around. Trade.
So I'll ask you a question because I know Peter and me have talked about this. Peter likes to see then. So you get the on base, and then you look at the home run range and say, okay, hit 40 home runs, 50 home runs. It's this. It's he's in this range. But I drive it off at plate appearances. So even if a guy got hurt, and it comes to mine is Mickey Mantle. Someone that had less plate appearances than a lot of people, but so his home run range was lower. But if you look at his home run per plate appearances, it was way higher than a lot of people's, aka Mitch Garver, things like that. So do you favor that in the home run totals, or do you sort of so a guy hits 60 home runs, that's amazing. But if a guy hit 40 and only played a half a year, that's got to be fucking awesome too.
So I go with all your numbers, if you're under 500 plate appearances, get rounded up to 500.
Mm-hmm.
I build you off of 500. And then for counting stats, my algorithm, or more of a workflow than anything else, is I'll use counting stats. So 45 homers, 55 homers, those were the big numbers for me, right? For each tier up. So if you were above 500, you got whatever your counting stats were. If you were below 5, so if you batted 7, because I think that was also, in my opinion, right? Like you're gonna remember, like, oh, that guy, baseball loves counting stats.
Oh yeah.
That guy hit 45 homers and he batted 1,200 times that year, right? Like,
but that's why I feel like a lot of times people don't. AKA like what I'm thinking of is Mitch Garver. So he's a catcher, so he didn't play a full season, but man, he led the league in home runs per plate appearance. Like he was by far the best home run hitter in the league, but his stats don't say that if you're just looking at counting numbers.
Well, one is I don't think his manager believed that, right?
Yeah.
As part of it. So that's I will do it prorated. I won't give the equivalent of a 16 to a 10, 16 to 20. I'll use all mine relative to a 10.
What do we do? 9, 16 to 20?
He was a 9, 15 to 20 because he averaged to like 50. So basically, Colby, I'm patting myself on the back here. When we tried to reverse engineer it, that what you described is basically what we thought you did.
Nice.
And you guys were right. You guys were hot on my trail the whole time. So
we had to if you quit.
Yeah, but for the guesses, right? Like,
oh yeah,
the kind of assumptions, like you guys were right there, and the numbers, right? So Batista, I think Batista got it, and Chris Davis were the two that I made who got it. Because I would also count triples if they didn't go towards a triple on your chart as a homer. Like triples, triples were like in The Office where Kevin uses the Clevin, his magic number. Like triples were my magic number. I could use them to like make the card I needed. You know, if you had 2 triples, I think Bautista had like 54 and a triple or 2 triples. So his 2 triples just count as homers, and he gets to 55, and he gets his 9, 15 to 20, which is one of my favorite cards I think I've made.
Yeah,
I love that card.
Yeah, like that's like the 9, 15 to 20 is like it feels exciting. It feels like it's a good mix of Sosa.
It's so deadly.
Yeah, exactly what it is. It's a good mix. I'm thinking like Bonds is a 9, 16. You know, you got Sosa 8. 15 or 14. It just feels about right.
Yeah, 55 feels special to me, and I don't think you should give out the equivalent of 55 home runs to people. 45 is exciting but not special, right? You should probably have a 45 each year. And like there are some sets. The year the Red Sox won the 14 season, where I'm like, I remember like Mike Napoli's like their 4-hitter in this clubber, and he had like 25 homers. I think 7 guys had 30 or more homers that year. So like that set was a bear, and it's like you had to make it exciting in the low on bases and give and that's where I compile everybody, and then I look at the set, and to your and if I look at the set and I realize like this set sucks, there were 30 guys, there were 7 guys who hit 30 homers, like okay, who were the low at bat high home run guys who I can give some juice to, right, to like make the set exciting, because like having a bunch of Matt Hollidays face off against each other is just not. Like no one's gonna be excited for that, even if that's what statistically was what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because like we kind of figured out, my undergrad friends and I, that it was like 45, 55, but then we sort of used those then as like ranges to within each other. So you didn't have to get to 55. It was like 51 plus was in that 55 range. So we were slightly off there. But we definitely allowed anything over, and I think we did 550 plate appearances. So we were, again, like slightly off. But the idea of if you were over that amount, we still just looked at what your counting numbers were. And that was the big thing for 2019 because Alex Bregman hit, I think, 40 homers on the dot. And his percentage-wise pushed him to be like an 18 to 20 home run, but because he hit this special tier in a lot of the eyes, I was like, he's got to be 17 to 20. And I ended up talking to Bob about what it takes to round stuff up, and it ended up skewing, I think, the entire set's power dynamic upwards, which sort of works because it's the most home runs of all time.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that cards in general will have more power. But the rounding that I had to talk Bob into doing for Alex Bregman for percentages ended up making a lot of rounding that made it more powerful than it should have been.
Yeah,
it's an interesting
and that's where I was saying my statistically driven algorithm is awesome, but it's also has some downfalls, like because it doesn't have the art. It is so blunt. Boom, this guy is this. Yeah, but like
it's Bob.
Well, yeah. So that's why I'm having
I would
fun
not
with my
make
96
one
set.
card. One card, like sacrificing a card for the good of the set, I think is, in my opinion, that's good. It's good to make the whole set exciting. And if you can do it with one or two cards, I don't think you have to skew the whole formula.
Oh yeah, no, and like because I wasn't really as involved in the 2019 one.
Yeah, the formula.
It was more just like the way the math. Because I completely agree with the 2018 set. Did we really have to do many sacrifices?
I thought there was just a few hitters that I wouldn't say sacrifices though. That guys that didn't reach their peak, like reach the at bats that we had to make a bunch of adjustments for.
Oh yeah,
but
so
not like a sacrifice. Like the only one, well, I guess 2019's come to mind is because of Glass now, but I can't remember 2018 that well. But that one was our graphic year. That was the one everyone likes to talk about because we graphically did it like 2000. And that's actually what I liked about your guys' set. You guys had a couple 2000 sets.
The 01 one looks great.
Yeah, Matt P's got the one that has the 01 style. And then we worked with a guy in California, Bradley, who was just kind of help us because we took so long to make the 2018 set. And that's what you were talking about earlier was how long does it take? You guys don't understand. It takes so long. We had 3 guys working on this and it took forever.
I only did 2 teams. I got on way late.
Yeah, it just takes so long to do. And so the 2019 set we made so much faster because we had 4 guys and we used a different way to produce the cards.
And that one, I think I did like 22 teams.
Yeah, you like flip-flop. But I've heard a bunch of people say the 2019 set grew on them because it was okay. But I think we had a mix between the 2002 set and the 2001, 2000 set. But I'm glad to see that, hopefully if we can do this, even what Colby was talking about, and we had talked about Matt, it was getting the cards cut out early, getting them done faster during the season. Like, oh, the guy hit it. He's on the Indians. That's the guy. Like, just cut him out now. Be done with it.
Well, and it's funny, before we decided to go with what Bradley worked on, I had like 200 cutouts done already for the season. And I was like, oh, damn.
Well, another thing
we ended up making a lot of them. Anyway.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Another thing with me is I am a real big stickler for, like, if a guy played so I'm making my 96 set, he has to have a 96 photo. Like, he can't have any other photo besides 1996. So, and we'll talk about that, obviously, when we get to the bonds.
Oh, I think when I made mine, I probably had pictures of guys, like, at home. Like, like the paparazzi photos. Like, there are probably a few guys, like, walking through the mall with, like, the ball cap backwards.
I did.
Oh, there's some, like, great pose ones. I love the one, your 2011 Prince Fielder was a favorite because it's just, like, his butt. Like, he's just, like, leaning right into the camera.
There was one.
Did you use the ESPN The Body Issue one? That would be a great
We need Jeff back on the podcast to talk about the body issue. Then
yeah.
I know one of the ones I had a great picture of was a guy for the Angels, a reliever, and he was throwing bullpen sessions, but the picture looked so legit that when you cut it out, you would never even know. But he was like literally just throwing to a catcher like in the bullpen. I was like, perfect.
Oh, and the amount of pictures for me, because I was just, again, I was not into the detail. Guys would have like a good action, but like part of it would be blocked out by a watermark or or whatever. And it's just like, I would just jam it in wherever on the card I could fit it.
Oh yeah.
And I would hide it under just about anything.
Yeah. And we've been using a lot of anything we can find online now. I'll crop it out. I'll cut it out. I'll slide under the stat box. Again, we're not trying to make any money from this. We just want to give people. What I've noticed a lot of times on the Discord, people talk about they love Clutch's idea, but really it just hurts that they don't have the photos. And again, it costs a lot of money to be legalized, and Topps owns all the rights to a lot of that stuff, so you gotta be very careful too. But if we're just trying to get them a visual representation of the Excel spreadsheet, and at that point, they really just want something to play with, and so they don't care if it's a watermark or not. They just want to play. Like, we just want to play with the cards.
Absolutely. So, and then the last thing I would do is I'd go to teams. Well, one, I would share all this on a Google Doc with like an Excel sheet with a couple guys who knew what they were doing, and try to get a couple people who are fans of different teams, because like I'd want them to look at it and go like, okay, so the Red Sox traditionally are like high on base, where you at with on base, which I really can't tinker with too much. But then like how do you make the Royals better when they were doing World Series, right? It's like, okay, so we're probably jumping the speed 1 or 2 across the board on a couple, on 5 or 6 guys, and maybe giving a fielding here or there because that's what they were viewed for, or like single pluses. Trying to get the teams to feel right. That was the last piece of the puzzle for me.
Interesting.
I guess that's the question I would have for you is, what was your take on single pluses?
Oh, I was waiting for that one.
I did single. It was a stolen base with -3 to the arm. I didn't think the free steal. I thought the free steal was just
no.
OP.
What?
What made you chart them?
Yeah. What? How did a guy get a single plus on his chart?
20 attempts.
Okay.
Or another. Right. So I was just basically 20 attempts, and sometimes that would also be like if I really needed to push somebody, I might steal there, or I might be generous if I needed to.
So here's the thing, and I'll let Matt and Peter break this down, but there's an idea of the single plus being maybe something a little different, and Peter and Matt can talk about this. Go for it.
You want to take it, Peter?
Oh, I mean, because that's basically what we've done
growing up,
and I think for our charting it was like 15 successful steals versus steal attempts minus steals, and if you had 15, you got one. But
that's close enough in my opinion. You would end up with very similar numbers to me.
Yeah, I've been using it in trying to. I've been doing 2002 playoff teams. I've been making right now, just to sort of test out some tweaks. And I've been kind of using it in the way that you've used triples as a Clevin for home runs. I've been using single pluses kind of as for doubles when guys are kind of in between and being he doesn't really earn 2 doubles, but he's better than 1. Maybe I'll put a single plus on there since so many people use them as the automatic steal. Or other people I've seen use them as automatically knocking in a guy on second. So the guy's on first, but the guy on second scores a run. It seemed like a good way to kind of mix
the RBIs.
Yeah.
That's what we were saying.
Super single.
Yeah. So
because I was telling Peter when I played. When I played early, I didn't read the rule book when I was a kid because I was just a dumb kid that didn't care about rules.
It's 7 pages.
Yeah, and we use single pluses as if there was nobody on base, it was a free steal. If there was a guy on base, the guy on base went 2 bases, but you didn't get the steal then. So I started looking at it as a way of this guy knocked in 140 runners, 140 RBIs. That's hard to replicate in a card. But with a single plus, all the guys on base go an extra base. It can kind of help with the RBIs.
That's interesting. I think it's so closely tied into the steal.
I think it is too.
So if I could read,
it's a fun tweak. Could that happen where the single plus isn't single plus meaning steal? It's single plus meaning a better single, a gap single.
Because we don't use strategy cards, so the steal is it's a manager's decision anyways. It's not tied into something.
And this goes back to what would you change in the original set type stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. So the number one thing I would have changed is I would actually put the stats on the cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would build strategy cards that got powered. I would make the strategy cards weak, unless you played them on somebody who add 1 to the swing, but 2 if they had 45 or more homers. And that would make the people who had really good or good years
interesting
better. I think it would tie to real life better, which is
that sounds like the icons that they came out with in the future set. So if they had a home run icon, you could almost say that if you had a 45 home run icon or a 400 on base icon or something.
Yes, I would do that. I think I would just put the stats on there because I think it would make it more like a baseball card anyway.
I was gonna say you could put it on the back, make it like a baseball card.
No one flips those cards over unless they're out.
Yeah. So that
if there was something there.
No, I get it. Too much checking. My biggest thing, and no one's gonna like this, I think, but my biggest hot take: if I remaster the whole entire thing, I would do a little bit more like Stratomatic, and I would do a 36 chart with 2 D6s to use. So you use a D6 and a D6, like a blue and a red one, and you could make a bigger chart because you have so many more outcomes, and you basically do a XY axis in it, and that's sort of how they run theirs. you could go then more than 20, and more people have D6s at home.
Yeah, I would
That's
be
so technical.
I know,
Yeah,
but
I think
love
people.
it that
I
you
think
can get
people
more
would be
charts.
intimidated. The elegance is nice. I like the 24-sider.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to. You know, it's like that's how I know it's a good idea because it's like I don't want to like it.
Well, I just like the idea of like we were talking about before with like too many people being like similar charts. When you expand the number, then you can create more variation within the chart.
Yeah, that's the. It's how do you keep it simple and how do you give yourself the most options? That's the pinch there.
I want to be like I've told this to Clutch before. I've said I want the game to be able to be fun, but at the same time I could pick the game up and play with my 10-year-old kid. How do I play with my how does the 10-year-old kid want to play with their dad or mom, and still be easy enough for them to pick up and play and fun, but at the same time have some kind of strategy background, and that's why I think strategy cards fail. Like, I think you need to make it all like kids love rolling dice. Like, my kids are super young; they love rolling dice. But imagine like now I'm a little kid, I'm 10 years old. I just want to play with my dad.
Oh, when that dice is spinning,
it's awesome. So anyway, that does anybody else have any other questions for Colby before we probably break into part 2 of our podcast, or we actually break down some specific cards that we have made as creators?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Everyone loves what they've
I would
talked about
love
so
to
far.
hear about some of the cards you guys liked, and I'll see if I have any stories on them and what my decision
I'm trying to
making.
think here.
I always like the Pirates Andrew McCutcheon. I think it was 2013.
Is it 2014? He's 11.
It's the one where he's in a black jersey, like rounding the bases.
Oh, see, I have no idea what their pictures are. I only see them in the spreadsheets. I'm pulling up my master spreadsheet right now.
You're killing me, Colby.
I have no idea what these things look like. They're just like I hate to be like.
We get Matt P on the podcast.
Who's the worm in the Matrix? Who's just like he's seeing all the code come down.
Yeah.
And he's like I don't see it. I just see blonde, brunette, redhead.
Yeah, because I found your blog like after you were basically done already. Like you weren't really posting much anymore.
Found this remnant.
So then I found like the Twitter and stuff, and that's where I got all the cards from. And I was like, this Andrew McCutcheon, like, because he was like my favorite guy to watch at the time, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, I got this guy that's similar. He's not Griffey, but like he's a top tier center fielder. He's awesome to plug and play with the Pirates of 0001, who really weren't that good, but they had Giles and Kendall. And it was like I could put McCutcheon out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he fit. Yeah, they're just
now they're formidable. Yeah.
And similar to Matt, I started probably in 2017 making cards, and so like I was looking at your blog and then Peter's blog in its infancy, and going, okay, like I love what people are doing, and I want to do my own, and so that's kind of how I got into it. And then I think Peter reached out to me and was like, do you want to start doing stuff for the blog? And that's how I did it. But I mean, then I think I reached out to Matt P and got myself a 2014 set, and I'm like, this is so much fucking fun to play with, because all I had was 00 and 01. I'm like, this is so cool to have something newer, even though the Indians sucked in 2014, which didn't help, but it was fun to play with McCutcheon, and I think it was Jose Batista at the 11. And I was like, oh my god, these guys are ridiculous.
Yeah, the Batista one. That I remember at the end of that year, I was just like, get to 55, because like,
oh yeah,
I think I would have like I was very tempted to cheat my rule. Like I was really tempted to cheat on my rule, and
it's
I was
not
like,
cheating; it's art.
yeah, it's
art.
art.
Artistic license. I was like, and he hit one last one, and I was like, there it is. I remember watching it.
So I think
like
you
that.
would like Colby. I think you would like you're not on Twitter almost at all anymore, are you?
No, I might get back into. So I kind of
get back into it when the season kicks up again. It's because what we do is we'll sometimes do like charts during the season, and like we'll like make random cards really quickly for like the top 4 hitters and the top 4 pitchers throughout the season, almost like fantasy. And so like last year, like I was making a lot of Cody Bellinger cards, which he was like outrageous, but these were all like during the season, if the season ended today, what would Cody Bellinger be type things. And so that reminds me of that. Like you're like waiting, is he gonna hit the extra home run? He did. Boom, this is his card right now. Like it sick.
Oh, there were those tiers, because I had my magic numbers, right? So I'm like 35, yes, 45, yes, you know.
They're
and
fun
it's like
numbers.
yeah, when you're just waiting, like that was the big, like the Shots Friday thing was one of my like I had no idea
to get
how
in on some of those like things. I was like voting for my people that I thought would hit home runs on those days.
It's a lot harder than you'd think. Like that
Oh,
was,
it's so hard.
and there's probably a way to automate it now because it was all just like collaborating, and then like people would send them in after the fact, and then like people were mostly honest, but occasionally you get people who are like trying to cheat at this game that had no prize.
I just
could
like to
probably
vote.
make
I was
like
this
a-
is the guy I think's gonna do it.
You could probably make a Google Doc and like people could just submit it.
Yeah, I think that was what I tried that last where I made it about halfway through a season, and then life got crazy.
Well, if you get back on Twitter, let us know. We'll all collaborate, probably maybe something like that, because it'd be really fun to do. That's the one thing that kind of stinks about Showdown is you kind of have to wait till the season ends or wait till like the quote unquote pennant trading deadline set comes out. It's like during the season, like what's happening during the season, and that's kind of cool. That's actually the coolest part I think about those numbers you're talking about, 25, 35, 45, 55 home runs. It's like the fans are waiting for it. If he hits this fucking 45th home run, you know he's getting that 17 on that chart. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he's getting it.
That too. Yeah, so I think I did that's why I had to do the historic, like, you know, I'd go back through and like show 5 charts from somebody.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like you got to look backwards in time. And you try to pick things that are relevant and rotate by position. Because I would during the season, I would release the previous year, you know, chart by chart, you know, just kind of to tease you guys there a little bit. Because I knew I didn't want to just blow my load all on one.
Yeah, we do. We do team by team.
And that's good because you get 30 posts,
Except
right?
for in 2018, it took us like 10 months to do like the 30 teams. But in 2019, we did a lot better. We did like a post a week or something like that, or almost 2 a week or something.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway, thank you again for Colby for being on the part 1 of our podcast. If you guys are listening to this, you know, stay tuned for part 2, which is hopefully us breaking down the Barry Bonds of our sets. And any closing words, Colby?
This was a hoot. So it was amazing how much of that stuff is just in the back recesses of the brain somewhere.
Yeah.